So what's good, TMG fam? It's your boy Ellen. I'm back with another reaction. How y'all feel? Welcome back to the channel. Salute. So listen, shout outs to everybody who told me to start Stranger Things yesterday. I was trying to reply in the comment section as much as I could without missing the show, you know what I mean? And bro, yes, I'm hooked. I'm hooked. Y'all was right. You know what I mean? I made it through probably about 3, maybe 4 episodes before I fell asleep, but you know what I mean? I'm hooked, so I'm gonna try to get some more in when I get some time. I hardly ever get a chance to watch TV, but when I do, I'm gonna get into it. But anyway, it's Mr. Ballin' time. Y'all ready? It's Mr. Ballin' time. We're gonna get into this video. It's titled, "This Girl is About to Live a Nightmare." I don't know what that's about, but I always know when it comes to Mr. Ballin', he coming with something crazy. So we're gonna check this out. If y'all new, hit that subscribe button, join the fam, and let's check it out.
Today's story has 2 significant plot twists, and one of them comes at the very end. So make sure you stick around to hear the entire story. But before we get into that story, if you're a fan of the strange, dark, and mysterious delivered in story format, then you come to the right place because that's all we do, and we upload once or twice every week. So if that's of interest to you, please offer to detail the like button's car, but as soon as they give you their keys, just fill their car up with an angry pack of Asian murder hornets. Also, please subscribe to our channel and turn on all notifications.
Wait, what? I be really paying attention to the intro, what he be saying, and I have no idea what he just said.
So you don't miss any of our weekly uploads. All right, let's get into today's story.
Hey, y'all make sure your doors is locked, your windows is secure, all right?
Right in the middle of the United States is a quiet little town called Millstadt, Illinois. Millstadt is home to about 4,000 people, and had it not been for Ashley Reeves, only those 4,000 people and their friends and family would even know that Millstadt existed. In 2006, Ashley Reeves was a 17-year-old high school student who lived with her parents and her younger sister Casey in Millstadt. Ashley was an excellent student who, even though she was over a year from her high school graduation, she was already thinking about what colleges she wanted to go to. She was also extremely likable and outgoing, and she had this huge infectious smile, and so she had tons of friends, and she had a very serious boyfriend who her parents adored. His name was Jeremy, and he was a high school student as well. On the morning of Thursday, April 27th of that year, Ashley got up, and like every other morning, she got ready for school alongside her sister Casey, and then right before Ashley stepped out to head off to school, she told her parents that after school, she had a job interview on the other side of town, and then after her interview, her plan was to play basketball with some friends, and then she'd be home. And so her parents said, okay, well, hey, good luck with your job interview, and just make sure you're home before 10:30 p.m. And so Ashley said, no problem, I'll see you tonight, and then she left. That afternoon, after school, Ashley made her way to Jeremy's locker, and when she got to him, Jeremy handed her his keys to his car. He had an SUV, and he was lending it to her for the day so she could go to the interview and then go play basketball. And so Ashley took the keys, she thanked him, she gave him a hug, and then she turned and she walked down the hallway where she met up with her sister Casey at her locker, and then the 2 girls left the school, they went out to the student parking lot, they found Jeremy's SUV, they hopped inside, and then Ashley began driving them back to their house.
I know this is a moot point, but this is very, like, how do y'all feel about that? When you give your kid a car and you help them get a car and they're still in high school, and then they lend it out to somebody else. I don't know why that struck a chord in me, but it did. So I had to ask y'all about that. How do y'all feel about that? I'm not really, no. Because then you become responsible and all that. Look at me being a parent. See, it's just little things like that when you're a parent of stuff that stands out to you. And you be like, all right, I want to know what the other parents think. Because I'm going to have to be faced with that soon, eventually.
Found Jeremy's SUV, they hopped inside, and then Ashley began driving them back to their house. When they got there, Casey hopped out of the car, she said bye to Ashley, and then Ashley left their house and she began driving to Fairview Heights, which was a town about 15 miles away where her interview was going to be. Several hours later, around 10 p.m., Ashley's parents had not heard from their daughter, and it was getting close to her curfew, and so they asked Casey if she had spoken with Ashley, and, did she know how her interview went? Did she know when she was going to be home? But Casey would tell them, actually, no, I haven't talked to Ashley since she dropped me off from school. And so Ashley's parents said, okay, no big deal. And they called Ashley, but Ashley didn't pick up. So they sent her a series of text messages. But after a couple of minutes of not getting any response, they decided to just call her boyfriend, Jeremy, to see if maybe he knew what was going on with Ashley.
See, this is why I like these phones today. You may not be a fan of technology, but I'm a fan of these phones today. Why? Tell me why, y'all. Why? Because they all have that GPS. They own all. If you have an Apple phone, I can vouch for that. They have that GPS where you go to find my, and you go to people and you find. I have each one of my family, my sons and queen. If I don't get an answer and I'm feeling I know their location and I'm going right to it. You know what I'm saying? Right to it. So hopefully they still got their phone on them.
Once, they decided to just call her boyfriend Jeremy to see if maybe he knew what was going on with Ashley. But when they spoke to Jeremy, he would say that, I haven't spoken with Ashley since I gave her the keys to my SUV, and I've actually been trying to talk to her all day. I've been calling her and texting her, but I still haven't heard back. And so at this point, Ashley's parents were starting to get really worried. And so after hanging up with Jeremy, they began calling other friends of Ashley's to see if maybe they had spoken to her and knew what was going on. But all of her friends that they spoke to all had the same story. We haven't talked to her since the end of school, and she's not returning our calls or texts. And so Ashley's mother, she just sensed that something was terribly wrong. And so without any hesitation, she just called the police. Now, the police in this town were used to getting calls every now and again from parents whose teenage child had run off and they were concerned about them. But virtually every time the police investigated, they would find the teenager had just kind of been blowing off their friends and family, and they would pop up maybe a couple hours later, totally unharmed. But the Millstadt police would later remark when they heard Ashley's mother's voice over the phone, the fear in her voice was so pronounced, it immediately pushed the police department to take this case very seriously. And so that night, right after this phone call, the Millstadt Police Department went out in force to try to locate Jeremy's SUV, the car that Ashley had been driving around that day. And the first place they went to look for this car was Latterman Park, which is this very popular public park that has a really popular basketball court that lots of teenagers would go to all the time, and Ashley was known to frequent that park. And this park was located about halfway between Fairview Heights, where her interview was, and Millstadt, where she lived. And so they go to Latterman Park, and right away, sitting in the parking lot, they find Jeremy's SUV. But Ashley is not in the car. She's nowhere near the car. And when they...
And here I am in my mind thinking they should have went to the job first. I'm thinking in my mind like, no. Where's the first place you'd have went? She said she had a job interview, but I would have went there first. But lo and behold, they found the vehicle.
Jeremy's SUV, but Ashley is not in the car. She's nowhere near the car. And when they searched the car, there was nothing of significance inside of it. There was just some of Ashley's clothes lying around. The police would spend all night and well into the morning combing Latterman Park looking for any sign of Ashley, but there wasn't one. And so as the sun came up and the police were nowhere closer to finding this girl, they began to suspect that, perhaps foul play was involved. And so the first person they hauled in for questioning was Ashley's boyfriend, Jeremy. But as soon as he sat in the interrogation room, he demonstrated a real concern for Ashley. He had a rock-solid alibi, and he basically was an open book. And so they quickly ruled him out as a suspect. And then the police basically began hauling in all of Ashley's friends and acquaintances and family members, basically anybody that knew her. They were bringing them into the station to find out if they knew anything that could help them figure out where Ashley was.
Yeah, because we don't know anything so far. Like, I need more information. All we know is she had that interview. She was going to go play basketball. She got the vehicle from her boyfriend, and she dropped her friend off. She got up in the morning like she normally did for school. She was well known and well liked in school. Like, literally going through my mind, and everything piece of information he gave us in the beginning, normally I could be like, yo, I'm watching the boyfriend, or that friend that she dropped off, I'm like, she got something to do. No, I have no idea where or who to look at right now. So I know the police are struggling.
Station to find out if they knew anything that could help them figure out where Ashley was. And more specifically, the police were really looking to see if any of these people were hiding something. And sure enough, a few of the friends that were brought in were. According to a few of Ashley's closest friends, Ashley was in not one, but two romantic relationships. One was the public relationship she had with Jeremy, and the other was a secret relationship that was actually illegal. In order to hide this forbidden second relationship, Ashley would tell her family and her friends that she was going to the park to play basketball, when in reality, she was going to the park to meet up with this secret second partner. And
how many times did y'all see this in high school growing up? How many times? You've seen it. The younger girls, the high school girls, were dating older men. Fellas, we were too immature at the time. I had a few older relationships though. I can't even lie to you, but it's rare to see. You more so see the girls dating the dudes that are already in college or already grown and have jobs and stuff like that when we in high school. You see it a lot more so than you ever see the boys. I did not see this coming.
in reality, she was going to the park to meet up with this secret second partner. And the day before, when Ashley went missing, her friends told police that that was the exact reason she was going to Latterman Park. The police got the name of this secret person from Ashley's friends. His name was Sam Shelton, and the police tracked him down. When they found him, he was at a baseball practice, but the police didn't care. They marched right onto the baseball diamond, and they grabbed Sam, and they brought him back to the police station. And then when he got there, they sat him down in the interrogation room, and he's still wearing his baseball uniform, and they asked him about his relationship with Ashley. And he immediately denies it and says he does not have a relationship with Ashley. He's got no idea why he's here. But pretty quickly, after a few questions, Sam's answers became inconsistent, and so the police just ratcheted up the pressure on him. And then finally, after 12 hours of questioning, the interrogator brings up Sam's mother and his grandmother, and he says to Sam, how would they feel if they knew you were lying to the police right now? And this just broke Sam, and so he cracked. Now, at this point, the police were already expecting the worst when it came to Ashley, but they were not ready for just how brutal Sam's confession would be about what exactly he did to her. The following is an account based on his confession. 30 hours earlier, Ashley wrapped up her interview in Fairview Heights, and she made her way to Latterman Park to meet up with Sam. And now it's not clear exactly how they met up, but eventually the two of them did connect, and they made their way over to Sam's car where they became intimate. Afterwards, the two are sitting in the front two seats of Sam's car. Sam is in the driver's seat and Ashley is in the passenger seat. And while they're sitting there, something happens that causes this huge fight between the two of them. And at some point, Sam tells Ashley to get out of the car, but Ashley refuses. She wants to talk to him. She wants to deal with their issues, but Sam's not having it. And so he gets so mad at her that he lunges across the center console of the car and he puts Ashley into a vicious chokehold. Now, he tells police his plan was to kind of yank her out of the car, but he squeezed so hard around her neck that he heard this loud popping sound coming from her neck. It was the sound of her neck breaking.
Holy see. Oh my gosh, bro. Yo, this is it's not similar to this, so don't compare it to this, but we was having this conversation the other day, and we were saying, me and Queen was like, thank gosh, man. A lot of situations you were in your younger days that you weren't thinking could have went so left. Think about scuffles and fights you got in back in the day when you were kids or teenagers or young adults. Think about those scuffles. Imagine you got in a fight with somebody and when you pushed them, they landed on something and it impaled them and they were deceased. Like, you don't think about that during those times when you were in that situation, but now that you're older and mature, you're like, man, thank gosh, a lot of those situations didn't go bad because I could be in a jammed up, messed up situation. Like, yo, this is crazy.
This loud popping sound coming from her neck. It was the sound of her neck breaking. And so as soon as he heard it, Sam let go, and Ashley kind of crumpled forward and hit the front dashboard of the car. And so Sam is staring at her, wondering what he should do. He's kind of looking around, making sure no one saw what he just did. And then he reached over and lifted her back up to see if she was still alive, and he saw she was. But instead of trying to get her help, he decides right then and there he's going to kill her. And so he reaches over and he begins choking her. But after several minutes of throttling her, she just wouldn't die. And so Sam pulled his belt off of his waist and he wrapped it around Ashley's neck. And then he began pulling. But he would tell police he couldn't stand looking at Ashley's face while he did this. He said she was staring right at him, her tongue was coming out of her mouth, she was frothing, and her face was turning this ghastly shade of gray-blue. And so at some point, when she still hadn't died, he released the belt from around her neck, and he turned her body so she was facing the window away from him, and then he repositioned the belt on her neck, and then he put his foot on her back to use as leverage, and then he pulled as hard as he possibly could on her throat.
You cannot tell me he didn't have intentions on doing this, bro. This is graphic. This is not just, it don't seem to me like you just did all this in the spur of the moment of you accidentally popping her neck. Now you just like, all right, I gotta go through with this. I gotta finish what there's no way I could just get her some help. No, I gotta do her in because the thought of me getting caught. So you rather deal with murder than just getting caught being with a young adult. Like, nah, I'm not buying him no. This was premeditated. Had to be.
Quite a while until the belt actually broke around her neck. And then at that point, he checked to make sure she was dead, and when she was, he stuffed her down into the floorboards in front of the passenger seat, and then he drove several miles across town to another park called Citizens Park that was very heavily forested. And once he parked in the parking lot, he looked around to make sure no one was watching, and then he dragged Ashley's body out of the car and deep into the woods where he abandoned her. It would turn out Ashley was far from the only teenage girl who found Sam Shelton attractive. Many teenage girls in the area thought he was the perfect catch. He was smart, he was handsome, and he had these beautiful, striking blue eyes that you couldn't help but just stare at. However, there was something unique about Sam that made him fundamentally different than all the other guys at their schools. Sam was not a student. He was a 27-year-old middle school teacher in Millstadt, and he also was the high school baseball coach. He had never been Ashley's teacher directly. However, years earlier when she was in middle school, he had begun grooming her for exploitation. And so fast forward to 2006, when she was 17, he had effectively manipulated her into believing she was in this romantic relationship with him, when in reality, he was just using his position of power to abuse her. In addition to being a school teacher, Sam was also an aspiring pro wrestler. He would often compete in local showcases under the nickname The Teacher. While Sam was probably nowhere near good enough to actually become a professional wrestler like you would see on TV, he was extremely strong and really knew how to do a chokehold. And so when he attacked Ashley and put her in that vicious chokehold, she had no chance at escaping. She was completely doomed. Shortly after his confession, Sam would tell the police that he would take them out into the forest of Citizens Park to try to find Ashley's body. But when they got there, it was late, it had been raining for several hours, and Sam right away acted like he couldn't figure out exactly where he had left her. And so the police were actually starting to think, is he lying to us? Is this whole thing just kind of made up? Did he really attack her? Is she really out here? But after about 30 minutes of the police and Sam kind of trudging around the thick forest, one of the officers suddenly sees something on the ground. He raises his flashlight, and there in a clearing is Ashley's body. And so the police and Sam, they walk over to her, and they're standing above her ruined body. Her neck is totally bent at a grotesque angle. She's covered in bugs. But as they're standing there and they're watching her, her chest suddenly starts to move. She wasn't dead. She had been left for dead, and she had been out in the woods with a broken neck for 30 hours in the freezing cold and the rain. She only had a t-shirt and some pants on, but she was alive. And so moments later, the paramedics, they come rushing into the forest. They pick her up really gently. They bring her out and they rush her to the hospital where she'd be put into a medically induced coma. The doctors would tell her family that unfortunately her injuries were just too serious and we don't expect her to ever wake up again. But miraculously, she would. Now, she would have to relearn how to walk and talk and eat and drink, but she would do all of those things. And today, she is 32 years old. She is happily married. She has 2 kids of her own. And by and large, she leads a very happy, normal life. As for Sam Shelton, he was sentenced to 20 years in prison for attempted murder, and he's still in prison today. However, he is up for parole in 2024. So that's going to do it. If you got something out of
Oh, snap. She survived. Bro, she survived. And he had been grooming her since middle school. See, this is insane, bro. This is insane. Not only what's going on in the news today, stuff that happened in Texas, all that was what's going on. It's so much that you have to worry about when you drop your kid off to school. Like, man. And then you ask yourself, like, how do they screen these teachers? How do you know? How do you know? Because this ain't the first. This is definitely not the first. And it won't be the last. Like, I don't know, man. This is this stuff in these schools, man. It's got everybody on edge. It really, really does, man. And this is the type of stuff you pray never happens. Never happens. You pray you never have to deal with. Oh man, like I gotta hear from y'all, man. What y'all think about this whole situation? And I have to ask the ladies: were y'all ever involved in like an older relationship in high school? And how do you feel about that now? And then if you have a daughter, how do you feel about her doing that? Y'all get at me in the comment section, man. Let me know what you think. Mr. Ballin came through with another good one. Let me know what you think. All right? Stick around and stay tuned, man. Until the next one, I'm gone. Peace.